mystery at all. It's a fake.
It's just
Right?
kind of
I don't follow fake. I think that there's some, like we talked about, there's some seed of truth in there, but I just don't know where it is.
Steve going in for the underdog thing again. You just keep being the naysayer.
I am.
That's crazy.
Nancy naysayer here.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go with my theory, which is just this guy was drinking beers in a bar next to this reporter and started telling this story about how he came across an abandoned Inuit village. He was creeped out by it, and the reporter thought, I'm gonna drag a story out of this, and I'm gonna jazz it up just a little bit so it'll get picked up by a whole lot more papers, and I'll make more money.
I have a new theory.
What's that?
Based on that, right? Mm-hmm. This explorer dude, he's like sitting next to a reporter, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I'm a reporter," and he goes, "Oh, you are? I have a story to impress you." Let's see.
That's entirely possible.
And that runs in the same vein. Yeah.
Right.
There I was.
I mean, and surely if he sees Inuits and stuff like that, he sees these abandoned places. He knows they exist. You know,
It's plausible.
it's perfect. It's the perfect mix of the theories.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's a good one. Or actually, a third theory is that he wasn't actually a trapper at all. He was a chupacabra. Just kidding. All right. Anyway, so that's it. If you want to check out links to the story, and we'll have plenty of stuff out there for you to look at, check out our website, thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. And if you would like to send us an email with your own particular theories about the case, send us an email at thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And also check us out on iTunes and on Stitcher. I do hope that somebody out there is not as cheap as me and you'll pony up the cash for the Toronto Star archive site.
Or you already have a subscription.
Yeah, maybe that too. And if you're an Inuit and I've mispronounced all the names, well, I'm really sorry. Feel free to call us or send us an email and then explain how to pronounce that stuff. Anyway, that's it for now. See you next week. I'm Joe. So long.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by a postal-carrying primate. Instead, it's brought to you by, among other things, CrimeCon. That's CrimeCon this June in Indianapolis, June 9th to the 11th. And it'll feature some really cool experiences. You'll get to meet some canine search dogs. There'll be crime scene reconstructions, blood spatter analysis, all kinds of cool stuff. VIP events. Also, like murder mystery dinner and cold case discussions and expert panels. There will be guests there, including us, but there will be also famous people you've actually heard of and seen on TV, but there will also be podcasters, including us and some other ones. So get out to crimecon.com and sign up today. It's crimecon.com, and when you're signing up, use the promo code SIDEWAYS20 and get 20% off your admission. So again, crimecon.com and use that promo code SIDEWAYS20 to get 20% off. See you there.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't get it.
Approach the aliens.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
I don't know.
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I am Steve, as always, joined by
Joe.
And Devin.
who's about to sneeze.
I was in the middle of a yawn.
Oh.
Gone now.
Once again, we have another mystery this week, and as per normal, this is a listener suggestion. This was suggested by Shelley quite a while back, and today what we're going to be talking about is an unsolved mystery that is mined from the show of the very same name, Unsolved Mysteries.
Yay!
Yeah, they did do an episode on these two.
They did, and I've been slowly researching this story for several months now, as you two well know. And while I haven't gotten every answer, I feel like we've kind of pinned down a few things that were a little more unresolved. So that's always good to know.
All right.
What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the deaths of, and I really hope I'm pronouncing this right, and I apologize if I'm not for the last names here, but they are Arnold Archambault and Ruby Brugere. At the time of their deaths in 1992, Arnold was 20 years old and Ruby was 19, and they both lived in Lake Andes, South Dakota, which is inside the borders of the Yankton Sioux Reservation. And to clarify for anybody who may not quite have understood that, the state of South Dakota has 9 different reservations on it. And obviously there's towns inside of those reservations. This particular town, Lake Andes, and the lake it's named after, is inside of the Yankton Reservation.
Yeah.
That's why that's that way.
It's kind of an interesting jurisdictional patchwork in there, actually.
Oh, buddy, we're going to talk about some of the jurisdictional stuff because it gets kind of muddy. But the reservation itself is pretty big. It's 665 square miles, which is just over 1,700 square kilometers. It takes up like 60% of the county that it's in, so it's a big place.
And the county it's in is kind of large too. Actually.
Yeah, it's
called Charles Mix County.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right.
On the border with what, Nebraska, the south end of the south side of the state.
Yeah, it does. It runs right up to the border.
Yeah.
So, talking about Arnold and Ruby. So, like I said, they lived in Lake Andes, as much as I can tell. And I'll be honest in that I do not know if they were members of the tribe or simply residents of the town. I've never really seen a whole lot said to that.
It's hard to tell by their pictures and their names, but, I mean, a lot of Indians have just regular, ordinary, white-sounding names. And frankly, they look kind of white, especially Archie or Arnold. I think
Arnold. It's Arnold.
Oh, is it? Oh, I thought it was Archie. Okay.
I made that mistake more than once. And it's hard to say. And while it does make a bit of a difference at one point in her story, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference.
It
so
really
I'm not too worried about it.
No, but there are a lot of white settlers in that area, so they're probably just white folks.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm not going to make a guess because I can't tell, and it's not relevant to the mystery itself so much. So the mystery itself is that on the night of December 12th, Arnold and Ruby's cousin, who was 17 at the time, her name was Tracy Dion, they were driving in the area. They were just south of Lake Andes. And Arnold believed that Ruby was in the passenger seat, which puts Tracy in the rear.
In the back seat, yeah.
And what happens is they're driving in the area. Oh, it should mention that it's late at night, apparently, and they had been out doing a little bit of drinking because they were all underage. Mm-hmm. And Tracy is the one who later admitted that they'd gone out, and I don't know how much they'd had to drink, but they'd been drinking.
It's my understanding there are kind of like 3 things to do in that area when you're that age.
Drink beer, drink whiskey, and what else?
I was going to say it's drink, smoke, and have sex. Just driving around the countryside.
That's being a teenager,
yeah.
Or early 20s, yeah. So
So they were traveling north on 383rd Avenue, correct?
Correct. So that's perfect because they are heading north on 383rd Avenue. 383rd Avenue intersects U.S. Highway 18. It's a T junction, so that means 383rd ends because the highway is going east to west at that point. And according to Tracy, it was icy out, and when they pulled up to the intersection, Arnold said there were no cars coming, and then the next thing she knew, the car was upside down. And so this is her statement that you see all over the internet, so I'll go ahead and read it, because it kind of helps illustrate a little bit of what happened in the car. It says, I was upside down in the ditch, and Ruby and I was in the car, Arnold wasn't in the car. I don't know where he was. Ruby was crying. She was saying, oh my God, oh my God. She just kept hitting the car. The next thing I know, the door, it was open a little ways, and she had enough room to then slide out. And then, so I was going to reach over, and then just like that, the door went shut. Mm-hmm. So that's her statement of what she remembers immediately after the crash. At this point, apparently, Tracy's the only one in the car, and I'm guessing must not have been able to free herself from the car, based on the events that are about to happen. Eventually, somebody does come by and sees the car and helps her out. It's at that point that she realizes that Arnold and Ruby are nowhere to be found. They should have been there, and they aren't. And I don't know how much time passed between Ruby getting out of the car and help arriving.
I had never found that out either.
I never did.
I would assume, given that she didn't say, and I was stuck in that car for, what must have been hours
without... It doesn't sound like that long, right?
It doesn't sound like that long because it seems like she would have mentioned it was weird that they weren't coming back and helping me out. That would be part of the lore if it seemed like it was a significant amount of time. But that's just my own interpretation of it.
Yeah. And I don't know how heavily traffic. I should have done it and looked up traffic counts on Highway 18, which is what they were right off the side of. But it's really the only road through
main
town.
thoroughfare on the south side of the lake.
So you would think there'd be a fair amount of traffic on it.
Now, depending on the time of night, may not be that much traffic, but that's a good point. But yeah, obviously no surprise, the local sheriff's department gets involved and they come out to the scene to figure out what's going on. The next morning they walk up and down the road. They're looking around that area trying to find Arnold and Ruby. The thinking at the time was that they, in a state of shock and probably helped with a little bit of booze, they decided that the best course of action was to just flee the scene so that they didn't get in trouble for drinking illegally, and after which they succumbed to the cold because it's December 12th. It's in South Dakota. That year at that time, the temperatures plus or minus were in the single digits. Mm-hmm. So
really?
It is friggin' cold.
Yeah.
But they didn't find any sign of the couple. And just as a sign of how cold it was, apparently when you read the descriptions, it's the car came to rest in a ditch on the ice. The ice was thick enough to support the weight of the vehicle. So that's just an indicator of how
it was
cold
pretty
it out.
frozen solid.
Yeah.
Damn cold.
Absolutely.
Although I'm not sure which ditch, because there's a ditch and there's a swale. The ditch is very shallow, and then the swale is deeper. The swale drains into the lake. So
one of the big questions of this whole thing is exactly where it is, and we're going to get into that when we get into a little more of the details later on here.
Did they not take pictures?
I can't find any pictures. No. This is what's infuriating. I love that this was on Unsolved Mysteries. I hate that this was on Unsolved Mysteries because all of the photos are from the recreations.
Yeah.
I looked at it like, oh look, that's a nope. That's totally that might as well be Robert Stack in the background there because that's what that is.
But you know that there's websites out there that talk about this very one, and they have those photos on there. Mm-hmm. That's a real deal.
Oh yeah, those are the real photos.
Yeah. Well, we run into that a lot.
Oh yeah.
With that show.
A lot.
It's
the joy, the beauty, and the pain all at the same time.
Yeah. Mm. So their car was supported by ice. There was no sign of them anywhere.
No sign of them at all. According to the reporting, the local law enforcement, they keep looking for them.
And was there? Sorry to interrupt, but is this a stretch of road that's pretty barren of people? Are there houses around?
There's not a whole lot of houses right there. It's farms and fields. A couple miles away is town. They weren't very far away from the town.
Actually, the town was not even a couple of miles away. It's I think the county sheriff's office, which is in Lake Andes, is 0.6 of a mile to the west of where they crashed.
Something like that.
So
It's
really,
super close.
Would have been really easy for them to walk.
So it's not as if they could have wandered away and not found some place to seek shelter. And that's what everybody's thinking, is that they wandered away, they sought shelter somewhere, and now they're hiding. Mm-hmm. And eventually they're going to come forward, and we're looking for them. But there was no sign of them. And when the sheriff's department was looking around, all of the stuff that I read, they said they didn't see any signs of where the ice had been broken to indicate somebody had fallen through. Mm-hmm. None of that is present. So it's literally, as my wife would say, poof. Mm-hmm. They disappeared.
Yeah.
Nothing but a set of chupacabra tracks.
Basically.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe that's what happened.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Yeah, but so okay. So let's talk about the whole thing that you were saying with the swales and the ditches. So for geography, for anybody who isn't looking at a map, like we said, Highway 18 runs east-west, 383rd runs north-south, and tees into the highway. That's what it looks like. On the east side of 383rd, there's really just not much there. It's not much of a dip at all. Mm-hmm. On the west side, so this is south of 18, between 18 and 383rd, there is a swale, or what did you call it?
What do you call it? A swale.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, so it's not really a ditch, it's more of a swale.
Well, it's like a ditch with a bunch of stuff growing in it.
But it looks like it could be at its deepest point, maybe 4 or 5 feet deep, but that's way off of the edge.
It's hard to tell because of all the vegetable matter growing in it, but then it gets deeper as it goes north, and it goes underneath Highway 18.
Yep, so there there is a culvert, it's a culvert or a mini bridge, something which, by the way, it looks like, according to I love going through the maps and going through the history, and you can see back in, I think it was the early 2000s, they redid that culvert because it's captured on the satellite view. But there's a culvert because Lake Andes is several hundred feet north of the highway. It's right there, and when the water level gets high, it will back up to that culvert and fill that swale. And this north of the highway itself is a walking trail, which Joe has helped me understand used to apparently be an old railroad track.
Yeah, it used to be right away for railroad.
And that's got a footbridge that crosses over that inlet that goes and swale. So the north side, the northwest side from that junction of the two roads is where it starts to get deep. But I don't know if when they were looking for them, whether they walked out onto the ice or for fear of falling in, they just did it from the bank. But from the intersection itself...
and we don't know where the car was, right? We don't know
exactly where the car is. I'm going to make a giant presumption and say that they flipped just off of the north side of that intersection. That's an easy thing to say.
It makes a lot more sense. So
and so they were in the swale, is what we're saying.
The car was the car would have been to the east of the swale.
It would have been what I'm saying.
Or maybe in the swale, if the swale was the ditch.
In between the walking trail and the road is where I'm saying it went.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
But as far as
the same thing.
But yeah, and so in between to the north of 18, this is getting confusing, but there is a very shallow ditch parallel to the road, and then at right angles is the swale. So again, it's confusing as to whether the car wound up in the swale. Look at the aerial. Yeah, I mean, really.
Highway 18 and 383rd Avenue, South Dakota, Lake Andes. You'll zoom right into it and you'll get it.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm just continuing to assume that it was the swale or something deeper because there was the prevention of being able to get out of the car, is I guess my assumption. But if they flipped the car...
I'm guessing they didn't have a new car, probably a little bit of crumpling going on. I mean, you've been in a car accident. It's hard to open the door sometimes, and I'm guessing here. But I don't know. What I have to guess is that because of the fact that the water level can rise, I'm guessing that the ice from the water from the lake had backed up, and that whole area was frozen at that point.
Yeah. So at this point, we've got two
missing people.
Missing young people. Just poof into thin air. With the aliens.
Yep. So the deputies, they've wandered up and down this chunk of road several times. The sheriff at the time said he had been up and down it multiple times.
And they didn't find any. That's the other thing I never found in the story was they never found any footprints, did they?
Nothing. No.
And it was
nothing.
Snowing, right?
I don't believe that it was. I think that it was frozen, but I don't believe it was snowing. But there's nothing to say that they saw footprints. But then again, if it is 5 degrees and it's not snowing, that snow may likely have frozen solid, which wouldn't leave you a whole lot of footprints. Walking on ice doesn't leave a whole lot of footprints either.
Well, there's that, yeah. So maybe they were on ice the whole time. Maybe they didn't walk in the snow, or maybe the wind just blew the snow around. I don't know. But.
Yeah, I really this is the kind of story that I really dig and I really despise because there's so many. It's not there. I don't know. I can't tell you. Yeah. But we've got these two people. They seem to have just evaporated into thin air. And that's basically the end of the story for about 3 months. Because then if we fast forward to March of 1993, someone driving along Highway 18 near that intersection of 383rd Avenue saw what they thought might have been somebody in the ditch, and they called the police. Local sheriff's department came out, and lo and behold, they discovered Ruby's decomposing body in the ditch. Or swale, whichever it was. I don't know which it was. But the point is that because it had been warming up, it's March, she was decomposing, her body was not in good shape. She was about 75 to 100 feet away from the scene of the accident. That equates to 22 to 30 meters. She was on the just up off of the edge, so still in the water is what I understand. figuring that, Arnold's got to be close by.
Sure.
They start searching that area. And one of the things that I don't quite understand is they decided, well, he's not anywhere that we can see. And I don't know how they could have done that if it was the outlet that went into the lake. That's why I still have a question of exactly where they went in. But they pumped water out of whether it was the swale or the ditch. They got water out.
How deep did we say the ditch was?
We don't know for sure because I can't tell. I'm guessing that the one that was on the south side is maybe 5 foot deep. That's a guess.
Okay.
And then
yeah.
deeper as you get towards the lake toward the north.
Right,
where
on
the
the
bodies
north side.
would have been found.
It gets deeper. If you go on Google Maps, there's some great photos that are actually geotagged to that location. They give a little more information, and the water is higher at that.
I'm just thinking about the weirdness
Okay.
we're about to talk about.
I got you. They pump out the water. Lo and behold, they find Arnold's body. He is less than 20 feet away from her. He is in relatively good condition.
Except for being dead.
Except for, well, his body was in good condition,
Okay.
other than the fact that it was no longer alive.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
And I see a lot of people call this out, and I'm not surprised by that because if he is, and the thing you also see called that is that he wasn't frozen to the ground, but if he was suspended in water, that makes sense. It also makes sense why he was so well preserved if he's in freezing cold water, why his body would not yet have started to really decompose, unlike Ruby's. Devin's rolling her eyes at me.
I'm not rolling my eyes. I just think I kind of agree with the whole idea of his body being perfectly suspended in, what's likely less than the height of his body, the amount of water.
Right.
That he's just somehow floating in the middle of this, like not touching the ground, but not so high that they could have found him before, and just like that to me poses a really big problem.
Okay.
Because they searched that area pretty well.
They did.
If he had been in there, I mean, presumably it was frozen solid. If he'd been
Presumably.
in there, they should have been able to see, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, there's all sorts of possibilities. I mean, I think that maybe it's better for the series. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, let's hold on to
Yeah,
it.
let's do it.
Because there's a few more, because we're about to go into some Weirdoville stuff here, which is going to be fun times, because it seems like an open and shut case of, well, they went into the ice and they went into the water, and that's why nobody could find them. It seems on the outside very, very easily that's the answer. Except that there are things that didn't work. Didn't match up. When they got there and they found her body and they were then combing the area again, they find a lock of Ruby's hair on the side of the road, which they say couldn't have been there that whole time. They don't understand why it couldn't have come off of her body once it was exposed to the elements, but I'll set that aside.
You mean that it would have, like, fallen off her body and blown over there?
Yes. As in, her skin is decomposing, the hair breaks free and blows away.
Yeah.
Which is kind of gross, I know.
It's true though. Yeah, that's one of the things that people have said, as you say, is that why was it there? But yeah, it could easily.
It could have been
when
that.
they were moving the body.
So she appeared to be wearing the same clothes that she had the night she disappeared, but her glasses and her shoes are missing, and the decomposition of her body was bad enough that they had to ID her with a tattoo. So it's not as if they could tell by her face, if that gives you kind of an idea. That's why I'm saying I can see maybe something breaking free.
I
and
hear what
blowing
you're
away.
saying,
Okay.
but I also think that's a significant amount of decomposition for his body to be, like, totally fine.
Well, but if he's completely underwater,
And cold water.
Yeah.
colder water,
I gotta get a tattoo, you know.
so we can identify you.
Yeah, this is Joe. Yeah.
You should actually get a tattoo that just says, "I'm Joe," identified as Joe. Okay, so let's move into the other other questions into this strange area that we're at here, which is it appears that there's some questions whether the clothes that Arnold was wearing when his body was recovered were the same ones that he had been wearing on the night that he had disappeared. The investigators, like I said, felt it was weird that he was in good condition. I disagree with that, but what they also found is they found keys in his pocket which they say they couldn't match up or confirm belonged to him. I'm making a giant giant assumption here that they say that because it was a car key and 2 house keys, and I'm assuming what they're saying is that they took those keys and they tried it on his house and his car, and it didn't work. But I can't say that with any certainty.
Well, the car situation, but the house maybe.
I don't know. It's hard to say because, like, you know, I have a key right now in my key ring that I have actually no idea what it goes to. I hate to admit it.
Well, but I mean, if all that is on that ring is 3 keys, right? A car key and 2 house keys, it should be pretty easy.
Figure out where he would go, then you would have that.
Or at least one of those 2 keys should fit his house.
Yes,
right?
and I tried to find some of that out. I ran into a bit of a dead end, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing here, before we get too much farther along, is that I'm using air quotes here. Reportedly, there was a dark Blazer-style vehicle seen near where her body was found just prior to its discovery. Which, you know, of course, then somebody's implying that she was dumped. Really what that's boiling down to.
Well, I mean, or that was the person who called in.
Or a person who saw it and didn't call it in. Or even worse.
You know, if you staked out that thing, I mean, there probably was like a dark pickup truck with 2 guys in a scene, in the same scene, not too long before or after. There was also probably a minivan scene. There was probably also a Prius.
I don't know. Probably not. Yeah.
Unless it was the time travel.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, those exist. They're talking about.
Apparently,
yeah,
they will. As we're still in Weirdoville here, the medical examiner who looked at the bodies said that they didn't die from drowning, they died from exposure.
Yeah.
Which totally drives a nail into this whole thing we've been talking about of them falling through the ice and drowning.
Yeah.
We're going to talk some more about that in a bit because there's a whole bunch of stuff there. But it's weird that 2 people found in the ditch, in the water, around the ice, died from exposure and not drowned.
Yeah, and weren't found in the extensive searches of that area.
Initially.
Day after, yeah.
Yes, yeah, days after. They looked for quite a while. The final thing that I want to talk about here is that there was a sighting of Arnold, because there's always a sighting, as Elvis has proven. Yep. Somebody always sees you. Arnold was seen at a New Year's Eve party with 3 other people, so that would have been about 3 weeks after he disappeared. The person who made this claim was subjected to a polygraph and passed it, though I think we've talked ad nauseum about polygraphs and how unreliable they are.
Absolutely.
And this person saw Arnold with 3 other people?
In the company of 3 other people,
and did this person know any of those 3 people?
Apparently not. That is what that is. The only other thing that I want to talk about that is kind of strange about the case, and then we'll put it to bed, is that in the reading you will come across the fact that this case was initially handled by the Charles Mix County Sheriff's Department, and then at one point it suddenly went over to the FBI, and then it's deemed a closed case in 1999, and that's the end of that.
It doesn't sound like the FBI really took a huge interest anyway.
Oh yeah, and that's one of the things that I randomly decided was a rabbit hole to go down, and we're going to be talking about that. So there's the whole bunch of strange details that we know. We know that she shows up decomposed, wearing the same clothes, but missing a few articles. He shows up without any obvious signs of major decomposition, and questionably whether he's wearing the same clothes, as well as having a few items or an item that doesn't match up, and this sighting of him later on, and they died from exposure, not drowning. So there's a whole bunch of things in here that this is why I got into this case initially, because it just doesn't add it up to me anyway. All right, now as we've talked about here initially, we're not exactly positive of where the car flipped, so which side of the ditch or the road it was on, which makes it kind of tough to determine exactly where the bodies were found. Though Joe, so in the reading, it always says they were found between Highway 18 and the railroad tracks, and I had never figured out out where the railroad tracks, but that's what you... How did you figure that out?
Well, I mean, there were no railroad tracks anywhere near the road.
Right.
Yeah, there weren't. But if you get on Street View and you look, there's a footpath to the north of the road, and the bridge across the swale is a freaking